Raider Nation, what's going on? You're watching the Raiders Report, brought to you by BetDSI, and I'm your host, Mitchell Renz. Interact with me on Instagram and Twitter, at MitchellRenz365. I got a six-pack of Raiders rumors that I'm ready to crack open, and the first one is around Roger Goodell. And does Goodell want the Raiders to remain in Oakland? This one's for Chucky heads. Believe it, baby. Roger Goodell finally said something that I agree with, and I'm sure most of you can hop on board with that. Goodell said that he'd rather the Raiders stay in the Bay Area in 2019 before moving to Vegas in 2020. And I think it's also interesting to consider that Mark Davis wants the Raiders to obviously stay in Oakland as well. And I think from a money perspective, it makes sense for the Raiders to stay in Oakland before the big move to 2020. And I don't have 2020 vision, but I'm hoping Roger Goodell can maybe convince some of these people in the NFL or maybe convince Oakland to let the Raiders stay. And I really hope that it's the Oakland Raiders in 2019. So I'm going to ask you, should the Raiders play in Oakland in 2019? I want you to type Y for yes, type N for no. If you're watching this on YouTube, Facebook, Y for yes, N for no. I'm going to give a shout out to PS4G because dude always blows me up. And I know I've told you I'd put you on the show before, but his comment, dude, WTF. I always comment on here. I never get a shout out. Well, PS4G, there's your shout out. Much love, my man. If you guys want to get on the show, you need to subscribe below to youtube.com/Raiders Report like my dude, PS4G. Also interact with me on Instagram and Twitter at MitchellRenz365. We're growing at a rapid pace thanks to these awesome Raider Nation people joining our YouTube community. It's the best YouTube community for Raider Nation. So again, below, subscribe. youtube.com/Raiders Report. My next rumor here is around a receiver that can absolutely fly. And are the Raiders targeting wide receiver Deebo Samuel? I'm giving this one two Chucky heads, and I think people are starting to talk. And the one person who's really going to start talking about him is me because of what Mike Mayock has said this past week. And Mayock has stated that he wants to add speed and talent around quarterback Derek Carr. Well, guess what? This dude can absolutely fly, and he was the best wide receiver at the Senior Bowl. He can play on the inside, he can play on the outside, and he just constantly beats defensive backs. And when I watch what players do in college, if you excel like the way that he did in college against tough SEC competition, that looks really, really good on tape. But when you see what he did in 2018, you can see the stats here. 62 catches, 882 yards, 14.2 yards per reception, and 11 touchdowns. Dude finds the end zone, can stretch the field, and if he can add this elite speed that the Raiders need, maybe we can get off of Derek Carr from Dink and Duncan, and he can actually throw it down the field because he'll actually have a receiver that he can throw the ball down the field to. So I like Deebo Samuel. I've talked about Andy Isabella a little bit also. Who's your favorite wide receiver in the entire draft? Any wide receiver, if you could pick one wide receiver that the Raiders would take, who is it? I want you to comment below. And if you want to know who my favorite wide receiver is, hit me up on Twitter at MitchellRenz365. Going to give a shout out to BetDSI for hooking up Chat Sports with the best promo code on the internet. It's chatsports.com/bet. Remember to use that promo code LIVE120 for a 120% deposit bonus. Sign up and deposit with MasterCard or Bitcoin, and then just DM us on Twitter at ChatSports, and we're going to hook you up with a free NFL jersey. You want Derek Carr? You want Bo Jackson? I got you covered. And also, we're going to add a little cherry on top. We got a 150% deposit bonus if you use Bitcoin. If you don't know how to use Bitcoin, slide in my DMs at MitchellRenz365, and I'm going to help you go through the process because it's awesome. It's really easy to use. Shout out to BetDSI for hooking us up here with the best promo on the internet. And also remember, get that free NFL jersey. All right, targeting wide receiver Tyrell Williams. This one's two Chucky heads also. People are starting to talk about it. And why? Because Mike Mayock said they're trying to add talent around Derek Carr, and I absolutely love this Tyrell Williams character because I think he'd be a great fit for what the Raiders are trying to do. And when you look at how big he is, 6'4", 205 pounds, and he can stretch the field, and at times I think he was covered up by other talented receivers on the Chargers, and I think he was just covered up by the amount of times they would run the football with Melvin Gordon. But when you look to see what he did in 2018, 41 catches, 653 yards, but what I really like is the field stretching ability. 14.9 yards per catch and 5 touchdowns. And again, I don't think 2018 justifies how talented Tyrell Williams is at only 25 years old. And the fact that he's only 25 years old and he's put up numbers like this, like 155 catches, 17 touchdowns, but again, it's the yards per reception, 16.3, 2,530 yards. Like, he's had really good years, but what I really like to see was when Keenan Allen went down for the Chargers, Tyrell Williams actually stepped up and put over 1,000 yards receiving. I think if Tyrell Williams comes over to the Raiders, it would be a great addition, and let's be real, I mean, I think I would love to watch Tyrell stick it to the Chargers a few times a year. Here are my top wide receiver free agents in 2019, and as you can see down there at number 2, Tyrell Williams is number 2. Golden Tate is still my number 1 wide receiver because, well, I think he's really still, I should say, he's still really good as I tie up my words there. I just don't think the Eagles used him right, and I think he's still, even though he's 31, he's really good with yards after the catch, and I think he would fit the Raiders' offense really well. But if the Raiders want to go young, Tyrell Williams is there. John Brown's talented. Dude can't stay healthy. Cole Beasley would be a good fit, I think, with Derek Carr. And then Adam Humphries. Adam Humphries is a sleeper. I'm just saying there. All right, which wide receiver free agent would you want the Raiders to sign? I gave you my top 5. If you could pick any wide receiver free agent, let's maybe not include Antonio Brown on this list because he's not a free agent, but any free agent wide receiver, who do you want? I want you to comment below. If you're watching this on YouTube, Facebook, hit me up. All right, next rumor coming in here is around the NFL draft. And are the Raiders going to take an edge rusher with that 4th pick? So their first pick in the 2019 draft. I'm giving this one 3 Chucky heads, and I think it's pretty likely. And I'm starting to read the tea leaves a little bit, and I'm starting to see what people are starting to put out there. And I saw a really interesting article here from Mercury News, and they said that the Raiders are going to take a pass rusher with that first pick. And I understand why. I mean, they need edge rushers, right? I mean, it's the reason why the Raiders had only 13 sacks last year. They struggled to get after the quarterback, and they even said if the Raiders trade back, they could still target a defensive end. And Mayock has stated multiple times that edge rusher is the Raiders' biggest need. So, Mayock, what I'm saying to you is I got 4 players. If this is the way we're going to go, I think it's going to be one of these 4 players. You can look at Josh Allen from Kentucky. 88 tackles, 22 tackles for a loss, 17 sacks, 5 forced fumbles. An absolute freak of nature, I think, when you look at athletic ability. And when he fills out to be a full-grown man in the NFL, I'm telling you right now, Josh Allen is going to be special. And if the Raiders can get him at 4, absolute steal. CLELIN FERRELL, a player that I like a lot coming out of Clemson. And I think he showed up in the national championship game. And when players play at the biggest light, I think that's when you can really see how talented he is, and he's going to be able to get after the quarterback. He's really going to be able to help the Raiders, especially on the edge. Nick Bosa, okay? Nick Bosa's career stats, I'm not going to show you what he did in 2018 because he only played in a few games. But in 29 games, 17.5 sacks, 77 tackles, and tackles for loss. I know there's a lot of people who hate on Nick Bosa for missing most of this year, but the dude is talented, and he can get after the quarterback, and that's what the Raiders ultimately need. However, him sliding down to 4, I don't really think that's very likely. And then Montez Sweat. I think Montez Sweat is a player that the Raiders could target, not with that number 4 pick, but if they trade back. If they trade back, look for Montez Sweat to be an option there because he dominated at the Senior Bowl, and I like Montez Sweat a lot. I've talked about him being one of my sleepers earlier in the offseason. However, with him, I think skyrocketing his draft stock because of an awesome Senior Bowl. Might be a little tougher now to get him at pick 24. So here are my top defensive ends in the 2019 draft. Is you have Zach Allen there from Boston College, Montez Sweat from Mississippi State, CLELIN FERRELL there with Clemson at 3, Josh Allen, Nick Bosa. I think out of all those, the most likely is Josh Allen. Fingers crossed at least, right? All right, who are the Raiders going to take at pick number 4? This show isn't about me, so you guys probably don't even care what I have to say. But I want to know from you because I read these comments. I go on YouTube, and I see what you guys put. Sometimes you guys are nice, sometimes not so much. But I also really respect the people who always got my back because that's one thing I love about Raider Nation. So who are they going to pick at number 4? I want to know from you. If you think that I look good today, it's because I'm wearing Mizzen+Main. Go to comfortable.af to see for yourself. They are the best damn dress shirts you will ever buy. They're made in America. Guys, I'm telling you right now, you can't get them wrinkly. You can wear them to the gym. You can wear them to work. You can wear them to bed. It's the most comfortable dress shirt you'll ever wear. Comfortable.af. Next rumor coming in here is from around Jadeveon Clowney. And Jadeveon's one of the top free agents we know, and ultimately, he'd be a great fit with the Raiders, but is he going to be a Raider? I'm going to give this one only 1 Chucky head, and I just think it's a small shred of truth, and I think it's probably getting even closer to tuck rule, tuck that status, because when I look at Jadeveon, sure, like he's super talented, he's super young. Here's the issue, though. Mayock came out and stated that there's a ton of holes to fill, and he doesn't necessarily want to spend big in free agency just due to the amount of holes that the Raiders need to fill, and I get it. And I understand and I respect him coming out and saying that. The other thing is with Clowney, he's likely going to be franchise tagged, and I'd actually be surprised if they don't franchise tag him. And he's going to be probably up in that $100 million area, and when I'm thinking about what the Raiders need, and if they need a lot of players to fill those holes, Jadeveon, my man, I know what you did in 2018 is good, but at the end of the day, I don't know if you're actually going to be worth that $100 million. So 47 tackles, 9 sacks, 3 forced or fumble recoveries, but he hit the quarterback 21 times, and we know that the Raiders need to be able to hit the quarterback, and if he can do it, that's great. However, in terms of money, I just don't really see it making all that much sense. But I want to know from you, should the Raiders give Clowney $100 million? Let's say the Texans don't sign him or don't franchise tag him, and he hits free agency. And Clowney looks at the Raiders and say, yo, you give me $100 million, I'll sign with you. So should the Raiders give Clowney $100 million? Should type 100 for yes or just type a 0 for no? If you guys want to bet on the Super Bowl, there's one place to do it. It's at chatsports.com/bet. Use promo code LIVE120 for 120% deposit bonus when you sign up and deposit with MasterCard or Bitcoin. DM us on Twitter at chatsports. We're going to hook you up with a free NFL jersey. You want Derek Carr? You want Bo? Man, guess what? I got you. And guess what? I got you even a little bit more thanks to Bitcoin. Get a 150% deposit bonus when you sign up and deposit with Bitcoin. You put down $100, you'll get, that's right, $150 for free. And if you don't know how to use Bitcoin, Mom, I'm looking at you, DM me or you hit me up with your phone number, Mom. It also works too. And I'll help you go through the process. Bitcoin, BetDSI, hooking us up with the best promo code on the internet. My last rumor here is around Mike Mayock and Frank Clark. And does Mayock want Frank Clark? I'm giving this one 3 Chucky heads, and I think it's pretty likely. And you might be saying, well, no shit, Mitch. He wants Frank Clark. He's a great defensive end. He's a great pass rusher. But I'm starting to, again, read certain things that Mayock is saying and just starting to just go out there and take a little bit deep dive. And you know what? You guys have been kind of yelling at me for being a little too safe, so I'm going to go out on the edge a little bit more often here. And since the fact that the Raiders don't want to spend big in free agency, I think in terms of bang for your buck, Frank Clark might be the best option at defensive end. And I've looked around the internet, and I can see maybe he could potentially be getting like 4 years, $48 million. When you look to see what he did the last 3 years, 32 sacks, 66 quarterback hits, I'm telling you, I love me some Frank Clark. And while I'm looking at production even from this past season, 41 tackles, 10 tackles for a loss, 13 sacks, and 27 quarterback hits. Like, Clark's going to be able to get after the quarterback, and the fact that he had 13 sacks, and that's the amount the Raiders had, man, like, Frank Clark's going to be a huge addition, and he's also done it his entire career. So when I look at longevity, when I look at what he's done recently, I love me some Frank Clark, 136 tackles, 35 sacks, 72 quarterback for hits. Now, here are my top pass rusher free agents. And yes, Frank Clark is number 5 on this list, but this is just solely based on talent. D4, Chiefs, I think he's going to be a Chief. Trey Flowers. Now, I do love Trey Flowers. I would take Trey Flowers over Frank Clark straight up. But I don't know how likely it is just in terms of money. Jadeveon Clowney, as I mentioned before, I think he's going to go to the Texans. DeMarcus Lawrence. If DeMarcus Lawrence hits free agency, maybe I'll dye my hair blonde. Maybe. All right, should the Raiders sign Frank Clark? I want to know from you. Should type S for sign or type P for pass? And if you want to know what I think, hit me up on IG or Twitter at Mitchell Renz 365. I'll be back next week with some more Raiders rumors, so have a good weekend. Raider Nation, what's going on? Is this the #1 Raiders channel on YouTube? For Chucky heads, believe it, baby. And if you haven't already, subscribe right here. I'm giving you Chucky heads, news, rumors, Raider Nation rumors. And look at this. I'm making your life easier. Check out my next video. Thanks for watching, and go Raiders.